This podcast is for you if you want to learn about the wonderful and wacky world of the English language and the people who speak it. If you want to learn English, speak English, and understand different speakers of English, then you're in the right place and you're going to love our podcast episode today. Welcome to English World with Kris and Amerikos. We are a team of language lovers, expert teachers, and native speakers who are on a mission to help people around the world speak English and show the world their true value. We correct mistakes, practice pronunciation, and explore grammar rules while drinking coffee and having fun. So get comfortable, relax, grab a pen and paper, and welcome to the show. Today's episode is brought to you by English Every Day, an unlimited speaking practice program where you can join live speaking practice lessons with professional native teachers 5 times every day. There are a lot of courses on the internet and a lot of useful videos too, but the one thing that is missing for most English learners is practice. And if you need speaking practice, then English Every Day is for you. So click the link in the description or go to krisamerikos.com to learn more today. So today we have Luke with us. And Luke, tell us a little bit about how you got started for anyone who's watching or listening who maybe doesn't know who you are. I don't know if that's possible, but if they don't know who you are, then tell us a little bit about how you got started.
So hello, Kris. Hello, everyone. Thanks for inviting me onto your show. It's very nice to be asked. So how did I start? I don't know. God, I got to try and keep it simple. Although it's not even a very complicated story. But so after university, didn't know what to do, which is like what happens to a lot of people. Spent a couple of years just lost in the wilderness. Decided that after a conversation with a friend who told me that their other friend was a TEFL teacher. That's what we call it in England. I don't know do you say that, TEFL teacher in the States?
Yeah, the US kind of switched over to TESOL.
Right.
So most people are that now. But yeah, when I started, it was TEFL.
Yeah. So TEFL teacher, English teacher, whatever. My friend said, oh yeah, I've got a friend of mine. He's an English teacher. He lives in Barcelona. He just like works in the morning and then he goes to the beach in the afternoon. And I thought, that sounds great. That's what I want to do.
Yeah.
So anyway, I trained up I did my CELTA in an effort to, find a career for myself, because I was sort of lost in the wilderness. I had my degree and stuff, but I just didn't know which direction to go. So, luckily being someone who was born in an English speaking country, that was an option.
Yeah.
Right. So very privileged, but, so anyway, I took the opportunity, did my CELTA. It was difficult, but did it. Because I had no real experience of teaching or, like grammar, really, like no understanding of linguistics, no understanding of the sort of like the mechanisms of the English language. I was kind of like just thrown into it on my first day of my CELTA, where we had to do a questionnaire about parts of speech, like verb, adjective, noun, adverb. And I realized I didn't even know what the difference between those things was. And anyway, I did that. And then I started teaching. And I went to Japan for 2 years, fairly typical story. And I worked for Nova. I don't know if you know the Japanese market.
No, not that well. And how was that 2 years in Japan?
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, great. I mean, it changed my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think it was about it that changed your life?
Well, it gave me a sense that like, it gave me a lot of work to do, which was really good for me, because it really sort of gave me discipline and forced me to go out and, do things every day. I had to go out and sort of sit in classes. So we had about 9 classes a day, quite short ones. And so it was very intensive work. And I just met so many people. It was actually a real challenge to help Japanese people learn English really effectively. I mean, it's a challenge to help people learn English full stop to an extent, properly. So that was like, an intellectual challenge. It was just totally different experience going away from what, it wasn't the best time of my life, that period after university when I didn't know what to do with myself.
Yeah.
I felt quite lost, and didn't have a purpose. And then had these experiences. It was a learning curve, But by the end of the 2 years, I felt quite good about being an English teacher. I felt I could do it quite well. And it gave me just a huge, big dose of confidence, which instantly got smashed to pieces when I went back to London and started teaching, multilingual, multinational groups in London, which was like a different experience to just teaching small groups of Japanese people. Suddenly, I was in front of
Oh
like
man.
people with all these different communication styles and all these other different cultural things to consider, and the standard was much higher. But anyway, basically, it just gave me a lot of confidence, and I got professional experience under my belt, and that I think was just a healthy thing for me personally at that time of my life.
That's so cool, man. And as you were explaining it, I just saw so many parallels with my own story.
Yeah,
When I finished my master's degree and I went to Russia as like, a gap year.
right.
And I was like, I'm gonna go see what's happening over in Russia for 3 months. And then I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna have like the standard life, whatever, find a job.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, 3 months turned into, okay, I'm going to find a job as an English teacher because I couldn't speak the language. And then after a year and a half of teaching in Russia, I felt like you said, you felt like, I know this now. I'm good at this. And so we opened up a school there offline.
After after a month and a half, you
No,
opened
no,
up
a
your
year,
own school.
year.
A year and a half, sorry.
Yeah, if I said a month and a half, yeah,
An
that
hour
was
and a half, just an hour and a half later, you
yeah, yeah,
arrived, got a taxi. Right, let's open a school right here in the taxi. Why
yeah.
not?
Basically. So yeah, a year and a half, and then, I ended up living in Russia for 8 years, but when I moved back to the States, I had to go online. And then online, I had to enter this multinational market and teach people from all over the place. And I found
Mm-hmm.
that, the structure of how I was forced to teach in Russia gave me a good structure for teaching other people too. And, it made that segue into like, you used to be this local, you thought you were successful in this like local arena, and now you've transitioned into the global arena, and now it becomes so much broader because if you haven't been studying linguistics, if you haven't been studying some aspect of psychology, or it all comes together. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's really cool to hear like your journey kind of progressed in the same stages as mine.
Yeah. Did you find that certain things that worked really well in Russia or teaching Russian speaking people, did you find that some of those things didn't really work as well or in the same way? You didn't get the same kind of reaction from
Yeah.
other people?
Yeah. Especially I found that like Chinese students were very similar in a learning style to Russian students, like very rule based, very it has to be very structured and rule based. Whereas um, students in Central South America, it's much more feeling it and using it, and
Yeah.
you know less abstract, I would say.
Yeah. That sort of Latin sort of communication style,
But
which is
I'm
very
making
much,
generalizations, of course, right? 'Cause,
yeah, of course.
like there's
Yeah.
different kinds of learners everywhere, but that was kind of my impression when I started to get into the multinational teaching.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Very interesting. Yeah.
But
So anyway, after that, I taught in London for a while. I did a Delta,
mhm,
which was also like a punishing sort of training regime for
mhm,
about. I did it as fairly intensively. I was teaching full time as well, and did the Delta over about 3 or 4 months. I think it was. That's a
mhm.
long time ago now, but it's sort of like etched in my brain. The challenge of it. I don't know if ever. I suppose people listening to this know what the Delta is. Do they? Do you think? Who
I'm not
knows?
sure if they do. I had a whole story about the Delta back in 2013. I think I was doing that. Um, I basically just was like, they had an option of something that was more business focused. And so I was considering that. So I just read all of the suggested reading before and started talking to the people there. And I realized that like I'm probably, or my business is probably already doing better than this business that I'm trying to buy this thing from. So I ended up not doing it. But I always wondered if it was worth it.
It depends, doesn't it, really? I mean,
Yeah.
for me, I felt like I needed the Delta just to open the door to another stage of my teaching career. You know,
Mhm.
it just allows you to get better jobs and get better paid jobs. You know, it's like I felt like there was a whole other level of English language school or English language teaching position that was
Mhm.
not really available to me because I didn't have the Delta. And I,
Mhm.
you know, I was sort of a bit desperate as well for a few years post Celta, pre Delta, where you kind of like, I still wasn't entirely sure whether I was going to be teaching English for the rest of my career. There's a man
Right.
smashing something outside the my room.
It's
He's
so good. What you're saying is so good. People are just trying to get in. You know, you can't keep them out. It's
That's
fine,
not how
man.
you subscribe to a podcast, mate. You know, you're not. As you realize, like, how do I subscribe to this? When you say smash the like button, that's not what I was talking about. Um, anyway, so yeah, listen, any of your listeners, I apologize for the smashing noises. That's a French person installing a window. That's how they do it here.
Mm.
Anyway, so yeah, I felt like I was a bit sort of lost. It's a lot of my time apparently I've felt lost. Um, um, but so I was wondering what to do. You know, whether I would continue being an English teacher and stuff. And I decided I better do this Delta because if I'm actually going to do this job, you know, I'm going to need this because it's going to allow me to get, you know, as I said, the better paid positions. So if you want to make any progress, really, as an English language teacher, you need to take that extra step and get that extra qualification. And it's really tough.
Mhm.
Really tough. I mean, for you, you sound like you're established and you've got your own school and stuff. So it might not be necessary unless you wanted to. I don't know. It might be useful if you want to kind of look at getting different teachers who've also got the Delta. You know, if you want to raise the whole level of the school in that way, then you might need to at least have it yourself too, so that you can use that in your observations and stuff and things like that. But I don't know, maybe not necessary. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, I think it's interesting what you said about the feeling being lost, feeling lost. Um, that definitely was something that I think was necessary to have in order for me to transition to becoming an English teacher because it's some level of identity change, right? And I think that that really ties into language learning
Hmm.
because while you were in that situation, you probably also absorbed a lot of other new things that were happening because you're forming this identity around those experiences. And
Hmm.
language learners are putting themselves in that position constantly because
Yes.
they think it's a form of self-improvement, and they don't realize that self-improvement is self-change. And so there's a lot of resistance to change, but the change is necessary. And it makes them have this feeling of frustration, disappointment, loss, uh, being lost, right?
Yeah, I think maybe that's a mistake that some people make when they're learning a language or learning English. And I'll talk about people learning English because that's what, you know, that's what we do, isn't it? In our work, we help people do that. Um, and yeah, it might be a mistake that people make, that they feel like they can just sort of do the training and get the thing. You know, just simple process of one step and following another, and then they've got English, and then they can add that to their CV and stuff, as if it's like other forms of training. But yeah, it's uh, far more of a personal shift than that, isn't it? I think the ones who really succeed in learning English are the ones who really do it fully, wholeheartedly, really embrace the whole experience, the whole, you know, the holistic experience of learning a language.
I think it's something that most people aren't thinking about when they go to learn a language because it's something, you know, kind of deeper. You have to admit some things to yourself, some uncomfortable truths.
Yeah. 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 Oh, yeah. You come face to face with your own ineptitude, don't you? You really do. And
On
it's
both the
not,
student and the teacher side.
yeah. Well, yeah, when you're learning to be a teacher, you're constantly faced with those awkward moments and those challenges. I mean, there's almost no end to the ways in which you can improve as a teacher. When you think about the multifaceted nature of language learning and language teaching, just language itself, there's the systems, your grammar, vocabulary, pronunciation, and then the skills involved, reading, writing, listening, speaking, and then just all the other aspects of it, the cultural stuff, the pragmatics of communication, all the teaching methods. There's just like so many things. And if you just take a single English lesson as an example, as a little sample of what it's like, that in that, whatever it is, 2 hours, 1 hour, 3 hours, just like the number of possible things that you can do, the directions you can take, the responses you can have to what the students are doing, the directions you put them in, your role as a teacher, whether you should be doing more, less, going this way, going that way. Should I be talking less? Should I be talking more at this point? How should I be arranging the information on the board? If I've photocopied something on paper, what do I give them? How much of it do I give them? It's just like a billion different considerations. And so, yeah, it takes a long time to kind of work on all those things. Yeah.
You said something that like they want to get the thing, like they just want to get the thing. And when you said that, it made me think of the hero's journey in storytelling. I know you do some storytelling stuff on your YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Like the hero also always goes through this challenge, always goes through this journey, and at the end, they always find that the thing that they needed was within them, and that's the transformation that needed to happen. And for me, it's like teaching someone English is kind of like this, to allow them to find that thing that already exists in them that allows them to just be themselves in English,
Yeah. And we have to be like sort of the Obi-Wan Kenobi of that story, don't we? Which means we have to die, about 30% into the first film, which is a pity, isn't it, really? But anyway, yeah. But yeah, like the hero's journey, that's true. It is ultimately a journey into the self, into the soul of, the ultimate battle is against yourself, kind of thing. Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
maybe the best teachers aren't really adding anything to the students, but really removing things that are stopping them from doing what they want.
Well, yeah, that they're trying to facilitate. They're trying to allow the student to be themselves and to realize themselves and be able to do all the things they need to do. You're doing that, but also you are trying to give them stuff too. I mean, you definitely are, giving them lots of input, lots of vocab, and a lot of instruction and stuff. But at the same time, trying to encourage them to do it themselves and showing them the way and stuff like that. It's a bit of a tightrope. I mean, a lot of the work is a balance between lots of different things all at the same time. For example, it's absolutely true that a lot of students come to a classroom and they expect to just be filled with English.
Mm-hmm.
All right. They just like, okay, I've paid my money. There you go. Now it's your turn. You do the work. I'll just sit here and I'll do what you tell me to do. But it's basically, you're the one who's responsible for this, and that doesn't work.
Osmosis.
Yeah, sort of osmosis, but I don't know. Like some students, especially if someone else has told them to do it, if their parents have sent them to London for a year, they're like, great, I get to be in London. I'll just sit in the class all day, and then after the class is finished, my life will actually properly start.
Yeah.
This is where I can just be myself, and I'm hanging around with my whatever it is, like sort of Spanish speaking or whoever, whatever, the friends, Korean speaking friends that you're with. And the whole experience flashes by quickly, and you realize that you haven't learned anything because, ultimately for the students to learn properly, they've got to take responsibility for their own learning. So you're right, you've got to kind of like step back and let them try and encourage them to take control of their learning, while at the same time, to be honest, providing them with a lot of things too,
Direction. Yeah.
direction, and simply instruction of like input, grammar and vocab and pronunciation, because they do need a guide. They do need someone to kind of teach them as well.
Yeah, they need the structure to get them there, because if you don't have that lost feeling, right?
Yeah, and also it'd be ridiculous if they came to your language school. I mean, I'm imagining myself in England now, a lot of students coming to my classrooms back in England. I'm imagining if you just day one of a language course and you've got 12 students in the class and you say to them, okay, welcome to the class. Right. So go on then. You can't completely hand the responsibility back over to them.
Right.
So
right.
That's what they've paid you for, So it's a bit weird. You've got to kind of train them to teach themselves, but also teach them quite a lot too.
Yeah. That's one of the discussions we have with teachers regularly is like, how much of our success is actually teaching rules and correcting students and these kinds of things that students see as more tangible things versus just motivating them to learn more on their own. Because like if I can use 1 hour with them to get them to do 4 more hours of input on their own, then didn't I teach them more than the person who just gave them 1 hour of input? This theory, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah, of course. What you want is a student who's sort of coming to you. Like that's the ideal student, is the one that when you do have you've got your lesson prepared and you sit down with them and you say, so how are you this morning? Just as a nice way to begin. And then you're off, and they're asking, they're like really, really engaged. They want to, they're really trying their best to explain, what happened to them the evening before. They're looking for all the words. They're trying to apply the things that they'd learned the day before. That kind of student is perfect because they are really, really motivated, and they really want to use you as a resource to help them learn. So yeah, most of the motivation has to come from them, because you can't force people to learn English. I've tried. I've had students who are just like, they're really not willing to make any effort, and you're just like working so hard, and at the end of the day, you're exhausted, and they haven't really learned any English. So yeah, the motivation must come from them. But we've got a certain amount of. I always kind of think we've got a certain amount of work to do in terms of allowing that to happen, encouraging that to happen. As well. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think it's a big part of the job.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
And that's why I think that there is definitely a lot of room for so-called non-native teachers, because they really motivate people a lot. Like as a native speaker, you can, coming back to like the more philosophical ideas, like archetypes of what people are expecting to see, right? So they come and they expect a teacher. So what do they expect a teacher to do, and all of these kinds of things, right? And so you're fulfilling this image that they have of teacher, and the more closely you can fulfill that, then like the more resonant, like it's going to resonate with them more, right? They'll be more open to that. So how do you how do you do that effectively? This is another question, right?
Students who come to a school and they expect certain things, but those students haven't necessarily thought about the whole thing as much as you or I have, or other people in the industry, or other, and so they have their instant sort of preconceptions. One of those being, I have to learn from a native speaker,
Yeah.
And that's like really ingrained. And maybe even, again, their parent has told them, oh, go to this school because they have native speakers.
Right.
It's like really strong from the learner's point of view, because they haven't done training courses. They don't know about language instruction, language teaching. They don't know all of the different methodologies and all the different theories about it. And so the people need something to hang on to in terms of what is going to be effective. And so the sort of perceived wisdom, or the thing that people say, is speak to native speakers, especially when native speakers are a sort of commodity which is quite rare in many cases.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you're in a country where there aren't any native speakers around, it's just people who don't speak English. Then the idea of the native speaker is going to be this like elusive sort of commodity, which, if you can get one, find one, that's going to be the difference. But people don't imagine that a non-native speaker could be the greatest teacher. They just don't imagine that's possible. They haven't thought that far. I have to say, it's small-minded. I have to say it's a pretty small-minded thing. I mean, obviously, there's reasons why people have that thought, because the idea being that non-native speakers might make certain mistakes. There might be certain pronunciation or maybe certain grammar or vocab which isn't in line with the way that native speakers do it. But again, that's not the be all and end all of being great at English. It's not about having a certain accent or speaking 100% correct. If you look at certain exams, like IELTS, in their criteria for judging whether someone is good at speaking, it's not just one single mark for speaking. The examiner, when they're in an interview listening to a candidate, then it's not just one mark for speaking. They've got marks for all sorts of things. They've got marks for like task achievement, like did the person actually manage to achieve the thing that they were asked to do, which was maybe do a little presentation or discuss a thing or work in collaboration with another student. Were they able to do that? Was the job done? The pragmatics of communication, was it actually effective? And then there's like, logical arguments, and just like getting the style of the thing right, and connecting your ideas in a way that's convincing, and then like one of those criteria at the bottom is accuracy of grammar. How many mistakes were made? But a lot of the time, when people are searching for how to assess someone's English, how to judge whether you're being good at English, a lot of the time seems to be the only criteria that people will focus on, is like, was it accurate? How many mistakes were there? And sure, it's part of it, but it's not the only thing. In fact, in many cases, it's the last thing.
Yeah.
There are bigger, wider, more pragmatic concerns, So anyway, that may be. I'm rambling. Sorry,
no, that was really bringing it back to the pragmatics.
We were talking about people thinking that if the teacher is not a native speaker, that they're not going to learn from them. But non-native speakers can be the best teachers in many cases. I mean, I've worked with non-native speaker teachers who were excellent and who I learned a ton from about teaching English. And non-native speakers can be great because they've done it themselves. They've got the roadmap, and so they know exactly what to tell other people about learning English because they've done it themselves. And so they can be brilliant, whereas native speakers can be the worst teachers. They can be in almost harmful sometimes.
Absolutely.
They're clueless, and also because maybe they don't actually care really that much about language learning. Sometimes if you get these sort of like native speaker teachers who are off on just some gap year type thing, right? Going back to that again,
they're lost. They're getting passionate about something.
Yeah, well, that might not be their motivation. It might not be the teaching of the language. They might just be having a great time and they're teaching English at the same time, but they don't, you know what I mean? That might not be their priority. Whereas often non-native speakers who've got to the point where they're good enough to teach English are often very passionate about learning English. And so it's a huge misconception to say that non-native speakers aren't good at teaching English. They can be brilliant.
Yeah,
It's just slightly different.
absolutely. I agree with you 100% on that. In so many cases, non-native teachers are better than native teachers, like you said. And a lot of times native teachers haven't developed an effective filter for the level of student that they're teaching. And they introduce a lot of idiomatic language and metaphoric language and things like this that is just confusing for the person at that level.
Mm-hmm.
It's, you can compare it to a foreign person just coming to London and meeting a random person who's never left London their whole life. That person
Yeah.
has no filter as to
Yeah.
how to speak with outsiders.
Yeah.
Uh, and
Yeah.
so a good teacher of English has to develop that. That's like a really important skill. And, a lot of times we call it teacher voice, but to be able to balance it between, you don't want to make the person feel stupid. Because if you're talking to
Absolutely.
them like a child, like a dog, then you're not going to be receptive to that because on the subconscious level, they're going to know that they're in an uncomfortable position. They're going to have resistance to whatever you're saying. So
Yeah.
find that balance of pushing them a little bit. I compare it to people say like if you're going to learn a language through reading a book or watching a film, then you need to already know like 90% of the vocabulary in order to effectively learn. Because if there's too much, then you're not going to really learn anything from it. And
Yeah.
a lot of native teacher lessons are exactly like that. It's just an overload of
Yeah.
a lot of different stuff pulled from different places, in my
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah. And it can be very overwhelming for the learners too, that kind of thing. And it's easy to it's easy not to realize how overwhelming it can be when you're a student in a language learning situation, like just how overwhelming that can be, like especially when a teacher is throwing so much input in.
Yeah.
Often what the teacher needs to do is listen a lot, and
Right.
and that's one of the things I love about teaching is really listening to my students and trying to work out what it is they're saying, they want to say. It's like a sort of almost a mind game where you're trying to guess what it is they want to say and then giving them the words that they need to do it,
Yeah.
or being one step ahead of them and, sort of predicting what it is they're going to say and then providing them with the words they need and then going through it again and stuff. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know how we got onto that particular point.
Yeah, yeah. I think it was off the native, non-native thing.
Yeah.
But I was thinking about it and going back to our stories. Maybe there was
Hmm.
a point when you went to Japan or a point when you were teaching early on. For me, it was in Russia where competition definitely pushed me to want to be a better teacher, where
Mm.
I didn't want to be in those situations where I didn't know the rule. I couldn't explain why. I didn't have a reason, or at least a really good resource to refer back to if I didn't
Hmm.
know. So I didn't have that base knowledge. And so I remember one of my first English lessons, I had just done a CELTA, but I had no experience. And somebody asked a question, and I was like, well, that's just the way we say it. And that answer stuck in my mind forever. Like when you hear a teacher say that that's just the way that it is, that like that's never the best answer, and like a good teacher can always give a better answer than that. And so that kind of like really pushed me to never have to be in a situation where I just say, "Oh, it's just because of that." So that made me go deep on etymology, go deep on linguistics, and to go into different areas because I developed like a battle rap attitude towards teaching English.
Yeah. Great.
Like I have to be the best. I have to be able to compete. Like if someone's challenging me, if there's a question, I have to be able to answer it,
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, totally. Um, Yeah, for me, I mean, that's interesting. You put it in those terms, the sort of the battle rap. That's kind of like the way you see it. For me, it's more just a question of like trying to avoid like the total awkwardness of those situations where you're put on the spot, or just like for many years, English teaching, although I have always loved it, really, has often been an extremely awkward and painful experience for me. I don't know if that's a surprise, considering, you know, how much I sort of do stuff online and the rest of it. But
Yeah, I wouldn't have got that.
no, because I'm a lot more relaxed and comfortable. I'm just, doing the podcast and these days as well, because I've been teaching for 23 years, and so before I started doing podcast or doing stuff online, there was like, God, how many years worth of? It's about 8 or 9 years before I even started making content.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of time was spent sort of struggling. I don't know if I'm just an awkward person or if I'm just sensitive or something, but often in classrooms there's just a level of discomfort that's still there to an extent, but it's always there. And so for me, one of the motivations for being able to do the work well is just searching for a level of comfort, you know,
Yeah.
searching for a level of ease, a level of fluency as a teacher, where I can just sort of get to a stage where I can comfortably deal with most things. And so, yeah, I mean, whatever the motivation is for you, it was about sort of like the kind of 8 Mile kind of vibe.
It was just the competition. Like I think it's the same feeling that we're describing. Like, you don't want to feel awkward, you don't want to feel embarrassed, and I don't want to feel like I was challenged and I lost. I think it's
Yeah,
this feeling, really.
yeah.
Embarrassment. Like, it would be embarrassing to lose in a challenge, right?
Yes, yeah, totally. Um, hmm hmm
And that's a good motivation for me, at least, to know what I'm talking about before I get into a lesson, or um, to have the general knowledge that I feel is necessary. That's when we interview teachers for different roles in different schools and stuff, that it's always like, as soon as I introduce grammar questions, it's you see who's who, and you'd be surprised how many people apply for these kinds of jobs and don't know what an adverb is still. And
Yeah. Yeah. Again, one of the many skills of a good English teacher, you've got to be able to not only analyze a sentence, not only do you have to pass a sentence and work out, all the different elements of it, which what clause is this and what type of clause is it and what's the subject and what's the object, and which which part of this is part of a verb, which parts are part of a noun phrase, what's an adjective, what's acting as an adjective, which part of this is an adverb, and which verb does it modify. Not only do you have to do that, you've got to be able to package it and explain it, deliver it to someone who's even more confused than you and who doesn't even speak that language. So yeah, again, it's a very complicated skill set of being able to do those things. But yeah, you certainly got to you've got to know the grammar. You've got to, of course. I mean, unless you're a very, very skillful salesperson and you've got your method, which is like you don't need to study grammar. You don't need to do da 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 da. And sometimes I wonder of those teachers if they're like, are you doing that for the student's benefit or is that for your benefit because you don't like teaching grammar? Probably both. Probably both.
I've seen those situations. But yeah, you're right. There are some teachers who have a different important skill, charisma, and charisma can be really motivating to students, to just like fill someone with motivation,
Mm-hmm.
and like energy, positive energy just flows out of them. I've got
Yeah.
one guy like that who Like he's just super successful. He set up his own school. I like helped him do the marketing and stuff. And then we started talking about English, and I was just like, what?
He didn't
Like,
know. He didn't have any actual grammar to him.
and he still has hundreds and hundreds of students, like multiple teachers working for him, and he's it's all charisma, like most charismatic guy I've ever met.
Well, if it works, it works. I suppose. I mean, do his learners achieve what they want to achieve?
I imagine so. They stay.
I mean, who knows?
Yeah.
Like yeah, I don't know. I've got almost no completely set ideas about this stuff. Um, to an extent, I kind of think, yeah, fine. I'm sure there are tons of people who actually improve English to a really good level, really functional level, without really getting bogged down in grammar and
Yeah.
learning grammar. And in fact, those people who say you can learn English without studying grammar, to an extent, they're right. Because if you focus on grammar too much, again, if you think that that's what it's all about, and you just spend your time with your head buried deep in a grammar book, then you might end up being unable to actually have a conversation with someone because you'll be so badly blocked by those thoughts of, oh, is this correct, and what is past perfect continuous? It's started in the past, but it's related to a previous action of a part. Oh God, yeah, grammar can really kind of block people. Again, another essential tool of the good language teacher is being able to teach grammar, but without it being an encumbrance to them in the future. About teaching people grammar, but breaking grammar down, like sort of killing the grammar beast.
Yes.
Because you can teach people grammar, but you can do it in a way that actually makes it kind of worse. I'm sure I struggle with that too. I mean, like, I live in France, and in the classroom, most of my learners are French these days.
Mm-hmm.
And, like in a lot of languages, they don't have present perfect continuous either. And so I've done many lessons where I've tried my best to break it down and explain and help them learn present perfect. And at the end of the lesson, I've felt like, no, I think maybe I might have just traumatized them a little bit more than helped them. At the end, I felt like some of them, the conclusion was like, I'm never going to use present perfect then. I just sort of like, you know what I mean? It's very hard.
Yeah. Present perfect is a gift to English teachers. You can just like,
yeah, it's like
going.
it's like sugar for dentists.
Yes, exactly.
Tooth decay for the dental industry is present perfect for English language teachers.
Yeah,
You can always rely on that.
the Russian students always had problems with that too.
Yeah, I mean, God, I mean, I know it's not surprised, really. It's a bloody nightmare, isn't it, when you think about it? It's like an action that started in the past and continues in the present, except for ones that are finished, but have some effect on the present. Sorry, what?
And then a lot of the popular book series start teaching this, at like what level?
Yeah, pretty low level.
Or even
they've got to introduce it in little bits, because if you dump the whole nightmare onto them all at once, they're like, like going through A1, A2, B1. It's like, learning English is all right, isn't it? Yeah, it's going well. Then B2 suddenly, right, here we go.
Yeah.
Present perfect simple, present perfect continuous, all the different time expressions, all the different possible ways it's used.
And now that you have present perfect, let's do conditionals.
Yeah, okay, let's throw that in there too. Yeah. So no, they have to parcel it. They have to sort of like give it to the students in little bits.
Yeah, I had one guy explain it. The most interesting way I heard someone try to make sense of it was this Russian guy who had studied like old German, and he said that there was this tense called the pluperfect, and that that a lot of older languages had it, and like older Slavonic had it, and so like if you explained it like this, then and I'm like, crap, nobody in their first language knows their first language.
Or it's like, really, in order to learn present perfect, we need to take a journey back into time.
Yeah.
You actually have to like decode someone's DNA and stick the present perfect in.
Yeah.
Invent a time machine and like, somehow teach their ancestors present perfect. And then, then they stand a chance of actually learning how to use it. I'm joking, of course, like plenty of people get it at some point, but it's a bit of a kind of strange concept, isn't it, to introduce to our learners. Yeah.
For the low level people, I always I compare it to like your time traveling, because you've got past, you've got present, and you've got this connection, at least for present perfect. And then basically then when we extrapolate that out to the other perfect aspect verbs, then we can basically see the same thing. It's just, point A, point B, point A, point B, point. So where A, future, present, or past. And so like then, we would gradually explain that out for higher level people. But like this concept of like your time travel, you're talking about two times at the same time. And that helps some people visualize it.
No, yeah, it takes a long time. It's sort of a bit of a nebulous concept which grows slowly clearer over time, but it can take ages, which is fine. It's fine. No one has to. You don't have to get it all in one go and then instantly start using it perfectly. You've got,
even though it's called perfect.
Yeah. No one knows why. Well, someone must know why it's called present perfect, because it's not perfect at all. It's imperfect. But then there's also imperfect tenses, aren't there, in some languages? Yeah, it's all very strange.
Continuous is kind of like that, right?
Sorry?
Our continuous aspect of verbs is kind of like that, right?
Like the imperfect form, pluperfect. Yeah. Okay.
Like
pluperfect. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. I'm not that familiar with the term. I mean, French has got pluperfect and imperfect and stuff, but that's a whole other story for another time. Yeah.
Oh, I remember I was looking at some of your videos and I saw one about ChatGPT and using ChatGPT in English learning. I thought that was really cool because I've had done a video about that too, and like a lot of students are interested in that. I think that there's this big push right now where some people are real receptive to the new technology and some people are really resistant. And so like the future of English could be in this direction, but like how do you see this? How do you really see technology influencing language learning?
God, I mean, AI. So at this current moment now, I do use ChatGPT, and I do sort of tell my listeners and my students that it can be really, really useful, for certain things. Like it can be useful for generating examples of language. So if you've got like if you're looking at a certain phrasal verb, you can just ask it to give you loads of examples. It's just a really good assistant to have in the classroom as well, where you can just ask it to give you examples of language and you can be specific. Because I spend a lot of time searching the internet for samples of certain like usage being used, and you end up going into Google News searches, with searching for things in speech marks. If it's a phrase like stand up to or stand down or something like that, meaning resign, and you're searching for examples of it, but you end up going on a wild goose chase in all these different places, the different sources, trying to find just simple sentences with the phrase used. But ChatGPT will just do that for you almost instantly, which is amazing. So it's definitely got its uses and stuff. It's limited in other ways, in that it can be quite hard to get it to do like a natural conversation. Although the app is pretty good on your phone. I only discovered that recently, where it's built for sort of voice activated. You know, it's basically audio and voice activation, and it's kind of pretty good at having a conversation. I think that, to be honest, I think in the future, I think it's just going to completely change everything, like absolutely everything. I think it really, really is, and it's incredible and terrifying all at the same time. And yeah, it could make many thousands, millions of people redundant. Quite
Mhm.
frankly, I think it could. I think English teachers are going to suffer quite a lot. Quite frankly, uh, you know, I don't want that to be true, but I'm sure it will. And English teachers are probably not just one of many jobs or industries that are going to have to react to the influence that AI will have. You know, even in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, the changes are going to be massive, I think. And
Yeah.
5 years from now, who knows what it's going to be like? I think it'll be quite realistic, I can imagine, to have a fully formed AI language teacher or language assistant. You can you know, call it what you want. It will look like a normal person,
Mhm.
like you're having a video call with a normal person. They can make it look like you. They can make it look like me, or just improved versions of us, which would probably be a better idea. Uh, and it'll be so good and so sophisticated that it'll be almost you know, we won't be able to tell the difference between having a Zoom call with you and having a Zoom call with an AI language teacher that's designed to look like you. But will there? I don't know. It's a sort of philosophical question. Will it ever be possible to get to a point where you have AI that is completely indistinguishable from humans? And will we lose that? We might even completely lose the sense of what natural, you know, humanness is. I don't know. I don't know. I can't really see how it's going to change everything, but I just feel that it's going to be absolutely massive, unfortunately.
It's rather dystopian.
Yeah, I do have quite a dystopian view of it. I don't know if that's influenced by my love of dystopian sort of science fiction and things like that, but I think that, or maybe my slightly cynical view of the world, you know, of the fact that, you know, the companies that will be producing and selling this stuff, that's what they want to do. They want to sell their software, so they're not going to care, are they? Are they not going to care if it puts you and me out of a job? It's a cutthroat capitalist society.
But
And
where one door closes, another door opens, no?
well, what door? What will be the door that opens?
That's what we understand now. I think there was something I wanted to say earlier that like every successful English teacher that I meet has become more than just an English teacher. And you have your podcast, you have, YouTube, you have audiences, you've built that, and that's not English teach. Like there are a lot of activities you have to do to maintain that are not technically English teaching. Like video editing is not English teaching. There are a lot of English teachers who don't know video editing, so they can't do that.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
so all of those other skills that you've added on, if one of them becomes redundant, then you still have all of these others, and you can still go in a new direction. And I think that the rise of AI is just going to be like more than anything else, like a great equalizer. Like now everybody has a lot of tools that previously cost a lot of money or they didn't have access to. They can learn information faster, more efficiently. So they can actually deploy ideas easier and more easily. And this will give a lot more opportunity to people who have nothing to create something, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think that as this happens, that just means that the human element will become that much more valuable. Like the
Right.
more that AI is indistinguishable from humans, the more valuable being human will be.
That
Right.
little 1% or whatever
Right.
it is, the difference will suddenly
Just
become big.
like if you have something that it's just economics, right?
Yeah.
When you talk about value. So it's
Yeah.
just if everything was human made before, and now everything, like most content is going to be made by AI, and this is all AI. I've already started doing this. I'll in my emails to my students when a new person joins the list, you need them to reply to you to improve your deliverability of your emails, so
Yeah.
to make it look like it's a real conversation. So they sign up for something, you send an email, and I say, write me back to let me know that you're not a robot. There's a lot of robots these days. There's a lot of AI out there. So like, let me know that you're human. And putting the focus on this is human. This is a like private communities, that those will become more valuable because
Mm.
um, there's so much content. You're just flooded with content. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. Yeah. As long as people don't want the AI content, as long as the AI content isn't as good as what the humans can do, but the AI content might be just fine. It might be good enough. There might be an AI TV network, or if whatever it is, some version of Netflix or something similar, and 70% of its content is AI,
Mm-hmm.
and people are just like, yeah, this is great. Have you seen the new show? Yeah, it's brilliant. Yeah, like Game of Thrones series 9, but they
Mm-hmm.
just did it with AI because it was
That's
quicker.
awesome. This is
Uh,
all, I think.
but that might be the case, and it might be good. At the moment, it's kind of weird. I mean, have you seen AI video now?
Yeah, it's weird.
It's
Yeah.
extremely, it's just horrendous. It's like some sort of horrible nightmare. I saw a pizza commercial have been made using AI video making software, and it was just like it was like a really bad dream.
But
Where
ChatGPT has OpenAI has Sora coming out soon, so that should change things too. That's
yeah,
a much higher quality.
and it's
Um,
only been just over a year since ChatGPT launched,
yeah.
and already they're like on the cusp of creating like video content that you could almost watch and enjoy.
For example, coming back to the example of creating a virtual teacher who looks, sounds like you, can teach better than you, has all the,
Yeah,
context, do it better. So great. That's great news for me as an English teacher, because now I can have multiple teachers like me teaching people who want to. So I can teach more people now.
yeah,
They
but they're
can
not going to need you in that
They don't need
situation.
me exactly. Therefore,
Yeah, but
I don't have to be the vehicle delivering the value to them, but I can still be the source. They can still obtain that thing from me.
really, then they're going to obtain it from some company. You're not going to be part of it. There'll be a tech guy
So
with
start
an
your so
algorithm. There'll be people who are not from the teaching industry. Well, maybe there'll be, I suppose, in order to get the know-how about teaching English, there needs to be. All it takes is one consultant. I mean, if
yeah,
one Kris who consulted with this company, and then there's like clones of Kris, like AI clones.
yeah.
But then of all the other thousands of English teachers who didn't get that meeting with that AI company, they're all out of a job. So you've got to be that one in 1,000 who gets the meeting, who gets to
Oh,
consult the company.
no, you be the company. You own it.
Yeah, but how many of those companies are going to exist? I mean, at the moment, the model we've got is that each teacher has got their own labor power. They can sell their teaching,
Right.
right? And so
But
they can,
they often leverage that through courses,
yeah,
which
yeah.
allows them to sell value instead of their time.
But they're still producing those courses themselves, and they're still
Not
selling them
necessarily.
themselves.
You could be a publisher of other people.
Okay, but ultimately, the thing is, ultimately, in the AI model, there are way fewer humans getting paid at the end of the month than in the current model.
If we
Maybe it's
keep
the same
figuring
amount of
this,
money. We might just be taking all this money from these thousands of people and putting them into the pocket of one guy. You're
yeah.
hoping to be that guy, but so are all the other people. So the chances of you being that guy are very slim. So it's either you're going to be okay or you're going to be fucked in some way. You know, I don't know how.
Welcome to capitalism.
Yeah, I know, but it's like capitalism on mega steroids, isn't it? I mean, it's like super duper steroided up capitalism to the max, which
Yeah,
also has
they're using this term now, a technocrat.
yeah
Like the owners of these tech companies. I don't think that you have to be a huge tech company and like be the one in a million. They call them unicorns right now, but like the companies that achieve huge profit or whatever, become a trillionaire or whatever.
mm,
Uh, like you can make really good money just taking control of the process yourself, and that requires just learning additional skills. Like you took control of part of the process by learning additional skills, therefore you had access to new opportunities. You didn't have to build a company, you just took other steps and got a different
yeah
outcome.
yeah yeah
Uh,
yeah
so so like, did you put someone out of a job because you get paid more
yeah
for
yeah
doing
probably yeah
something at
probably
a yeah, right? So it's all competition. It's all because it's coming back to economics, right? Like there's production and there's consumption. So if content is overproduced, there's not enough time to consume it. So the value is in consumption of content, right? So it's not
yeah,
in, so it doesn't matter how much you produce. It just matters that people consume it. That's why on YouTube you can have a channel that has 50 subscribers and you can sell a product that's $10,000, and that channel is going to make way more money than a channel that teaches English and sells a $20 course and has 200,000 subscribers.
well, what are the chances though of the guy with the 50 subscribers making that 10,000? What's he selling anyway? A car?
He has to see it's all in what choice he makes, what opportunity he's pursuing, because he can maybe that channel means absolutely nothing. The 50 subscribers mean absolutely nothing. The subscriber number is very arbitrary, you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
in theory, but I mean, the fact is that the more people who watch your sales pitch, the more chances you're going to get of selling it, right? The more sales you're going to get.
If they
So,
want.
sure, in theory, you can have 50 subscribers, you can make 10 grand. But I mean, it's very unlikely, isn't it? I mean, just look at the numbers.
I don't know.
I think
I've
so. I
seen
mean,
I've seen
I think,
worse things. I've seen stranger things happen.
yeah, of course. I mean, sometimes fish rain from the sky.
Yeah, I'm
That
not saying
happens, but it
every
doesn't happen
time
all the
someone
time.
has 50 subscribers. I'm definitely not saying that.
No, I know, but still, using it as an example to kind of demonstrate that I don't know. I get what you're saying. I totally get it. That it just changes the sort of the playing field or changes the sort of landscape, and the new opportunities arise. Yeah, I totally see that. But I'm also a little bit cautious of a potential for huge unfairness happening and a huge shift again, even further shifts towards a tiny proportion of society owning vast amounts of the wealth, and therefore, I'm sounding like a Marxist now, but I mean, that's
No,
all
no,
right. Karl Marx was kind of onto something. I don't know
I
what his
feel
solution is, but you
no,
know,
I feel the same as you, man. It's you can feel it. I think that it's just part of the cycle. This is how society develops. You go through these cycles, and
I
like
hope so. I hope so, because it could also not be. It could also be that we get to a point where through technology and through whatever, through all these changes, we end up with actually an extremely unfair society, and people have got no way of changing it. They literally have no access to changing it. Think about revolutions in the past that have happened when things have got to a certain point. People had a way to change things. They would actually break down the walls of the castle and storm the place, and like the French Revolution or something.
Mm-hmm.
It might not be possible to do that again. It actually might not be, because if you're talking about a technocrat who is in power and they control all the information, they control all the weapons, they control all the money, they control all of the platforms, all the electricity, if they control everything, then, and they've got, again, it sounds like some sort of very dystopian science fiction film, but they've got,
but what are the odds of
those robots, those Cambridge Boston Dynamics robots, the ones you kick it and it doesn't fall over, the ones that open doors and do gymnastics. Just imagine one of them with a big gun strapped onto the top, and then imagine about 100 of them. This sounds silly, but I'm kind of being serious, I guess. But it's not unfeasible that we get to a point where people actually can't do anything about it. I don't know. And maybe I'm very paranoid, Kris. Do you think I'm sort of unreasonably scared about this?
I think that the future and the unknown is scary, and that it's important for people to make meaning and have meaning to guide them in their decisions. And I feel like it ties back into language learning too, where the new language is part of this unknown, something that that's like facing the unknown is scary, and it brings up the emotion of fear, right? So it's like facing your fear. Nobody doesn't feel good doing that, but something good usually comes after that, right? So feel like the same thing here. It's an unknown. We're going to face it. Something good will come of it, even if while facing it, it's hard. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree.
And that's how I would try to make meaning from this unknown for myself.
That's good. I admire your optimism.
But thank you so much for taking the time to come on this podcast and tell everybody how they can find you.
Okay. Well, thanks for inviting me again. If you'd like to listen to me sort of talking about dystopian visions of the future, then, you're welcome to join my, podcast and stuff. That's not obviously what I talk about normally. I talk about all sorts of things. So anyway, the best place might be to go to my website, because then you can just, find the name of the show and find links to YouTube and my podcast feed and stuff. So the website is teacherluke.co.uk. Teacher, everyone knows how to spell that, but Luke, LUKE.co.uk as a British URL. Although .com will work, it will take you to the same place.
Oh, great! You got both domains.
Yeah, did. Yeah, because .co.uk. I don't know. There's probably large portions of the world who are like, "Huh?" when you say that. So anyway, teacherluke.co.uk or .com, either one.
Awesome. And we'll put all the links, the link to the website, the link to social media down under the episode, so everyone can find you. Yeah. So thank you so much for coming on the show, and I hope to talk to you again soon.
Indeed. Thanks a lot, Kris. Cheers. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to English World with Kris Amerikos. Now it's your turn. Don't just listen to English, speak English with us every day. Join our English Everyday speaking program today. See you in the next episode. Bye-bye.